always has a healing effect for me. If I'm not working on something, I will feel much more anxious. The fact that I was able to work during this pandemic and work through this pandemic was very healing for me. And I've had other people tell me that my work is healing. There's a certain calmness in my faces that people have told me that's has a tendency to calm things. They're generally not very anxious faces. They're calm and passive, and even though things around it may be more agitated, the faces are generally calm.
March was a pretty tough month. I had one of my best friends in childhood, his two sisters died. During that period of time, I probably knew about 9 people who died, all of them black. Then, sometime late in March, my sister Angela contracted COVID, and my brother Daryl contracted COVID. Daryl was on the ventilator for at least 2 months. And Angela, at that point with Daryl in the hospital, my sister and everybody was concerned that everybody was going to die. So with all the death that was happening, one of the things that I was doing, because I thought it was a really creative period, so I was trying to write and paint, but I had to slow down because all the days started to merge together. And so I started drawing on index cards. So all of these are index cards. And then I would keep drawing on the index cards, and eventually I put them together on the board.
During quarantine, yes, it has been challenging with not being able to go out very much, and I wanted to try some different things. So I went back and looked at some of my nature photography, like landscapes, flowers, and such. And the original photograph was fine, but I was thinking it would be interesting to do something different with it. And looking at the infrared photography effects I saw online, I thought, well, it would be interesting to just experiment with it and see where it goes. And I liked the effect and how it kind of gives a strange, sort of surreal quality to landscapes.
I started this piece during the pandemic, of course, and I titled it Just Barely because I felt that a lot of people were just barely holding it together. So I decided to include things like safety pins and having things sort of fly off, so it just feels like everybody's very scattered and just barely holding it together right now. So that's why there's a lot of pieces that are a little raw-edged and a little rough-looking. And there's just, the figure is looking off, just hoping that some things are going to change eventually.
This one is Hope Heals, and this one is Be Safe, Stay Well. This one is March. This one is more recent. Hope Heals is more recent. But when I created this in March, I had actually already recently started the process of drawing in circles. That's essentially millions of circles. And one of the reasons I started that was to be meditative. I'm accustomed to painting and sculpture, but I've never been this tedious. And this allowed me to focus.
The name of my piece is Landscape in Purple. Art does help me with the COVID situation and being isolated. It's still challenging, obviously, but it does give me something to challenge my energies and my mind into. And I also find that when I share my artwork, that other people seem to also find it, interesting or uplifting to look at artwork instead of just thinking about, COVID or the bad things that, could potentially be happening in their lives.
This is the very first time that I put a human figure in one of them. Very first time. I've had faces, but I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more structured, but also wanted to say something. And since all of what has been happening has involved human beings and has kind of been destructive of hope, I always try to go back there. So I wanted to recapture some other work that I've done where you're looking up to the sky and hopeful as opposed to downward and consumed by all of the tragedies going on.
I rarely have an image in my head first. Usually I will have a title or I'll have an idea. Sometimes I'll do a quick sketch, but I think what started was this middle piece right here, believe it or not. That piece was from an old sneaker that I had sitting around my studio, and I really loved the way it looked, and I started working on it, and as I worked on it, the image and the idea sort of evolved. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was really okay, and as time went on, I started to feel a little more at loose ends with things, and that's kind of where this came from. So it was a little later than the beginning. I've been working through the whole pandemic, and I find it oddly inspiring. So this piece is a little bit later than an earlier pieces that I did.
It's sort of outside of quarantine. That's kind of a nature scene that's sort of removed from the reality of COVID and the danger that COVID poses to our health. In another way, I think maybe the strangeness and kind of the unfamiliarity that's created by the purple filter and transforming it, that might reflect some of the the uncertainty and the change that COVID has brought to our lives. It's something familiar, but then it's not really familiar anymore.
I let it go. After I create the work, I let it go and hopeful that people find something in it for them. Because art, of course, is like a book. Everyone comes to it very differently. So in terms of being satisfied, probably satisfied during the process. I am rarely satisfied after it's over. It's an ongoing process, and I'm not saying I'm not satisfied with the work, but there's always this hunger to do more. Our most valuable asset in life, period, is our time.
What I found during the pandemic was having the time to really think about things and allowing my creativity to spread a little bit more. The time was what was really crucial. Being able to be home, not having the pressures. I was working from home remotely also I have a job, but just having the time to explore what I was already exploring, which is fabric art, was very helpful. And it allowed me to work larger, to just feel as if I could think things through a little